On Jurgen Klopp's 57th birthday and just 2 weeks after his official last day as Liverpool manager, I wanted to look back at some of the biggest moments in Jurgen Klopp's tenure as Liverpool boss and take a single moment from his career as Liverpool manager and assign it to a category of my choosing. So I'm going to kick it off with the peak of the Klopp era, and for me, this can be none other than that 38 game spell. Yes, 38 games between, I think it was January 2019, just after we had lost to Man City, our only loss of the 2018-19 season, stretching all the way into February or March 2020, where we then lost to Watford, our first defeat of the 1920 season. There was a 38 game span that we went undefeated, not just undefeated in that spell. We won 36 of those 38 games, drawing 2. And genuinely, we were the best side on the planet. Now, a lot of rival fans often laugh and say that Liverpool perhaps overhyped that team, despite how good they were. People said that they weren't necessarily the best on the planet, or maybe don't compare to some of the greatest sides we've seen of all time in the Premier League history. But 38 Premier League games in a row, 36 wins and 2 draws is absolutely outrageous. Like, we talk about, teams hitting 100 points, 99 points, 97, all that. Of course, this wasn't in an individual season, it was spread across 2. But for a 38 game span, 110 of 114 points available is just absolutely insane levels of consistency that I don't think we will ever see again. Now, Klopp doing that in that time with that squad as well, like, we didn't spend insane amounts of money to create that squad. Of course, people will highlight the Van Dijk and Alisson fees, but that came out of the Coutinho spending money. So it's also with a fairly low budget compared to some of the top spenders across Europe at the time, and to achieve what they did was phenomenal. Now, I wish, of course, we could have done it maybe slightly earlier than that particular 38 game span. If we just shifted it slightly to the left, for example, back a bit in time, we would have maybe ended up with 2 Premier League trophies across those seasons. But it was just the one in 1920. Still doesn't take away from what fantastic achievement that peak was. But we can't just talk about peaks without talking about lows. And to look next at the low of the Jurgen Klopp era, I have to look at 2020/2021. Now, there was actually 2 seasons either side of our quadruple season push that we had awful seasons in, and 2020/21 we actually recovered at the end of that season, made the top 4, versus the 2022/23 season where we missed it. So maybe for some, because we missed the top 4, they would look at that as being a low point. But there's a particular spell in the 2020/21 season. It was just arriving end of 2020. We drew a couple of games at Anfield. I think it was against Man United and I'd say maybe Newcastle or West Brom off the top of my head that we drew those games with. And then what followed was absolutely, I talked about incredible for what we did with those 110 out of 114. This was incredible, but on the flip side, I could not believe what I witnessed. We lost to Burnley, first of all, in January 2021. And this marked the end of a Premier League unbeaten streak, which included those 2 draws I mentioned, but a Premier League unbeaten streak at Anfield of 68 games. We were second highest in those rankings for unbeaten runs at home in the league, closing in on that Mourinho record set with Chelsea, a phenomenal, I think, 84 or so games. There was talk about us going on to that. And then for Burnley, relegation threatened Burnley to come to Anfield, win 1-0 and strip that unbeaten record away from us. Bonkers. But then it didn't just end there. We lost again, and again, and again, and again, and then one more time. We lost another 5 in a row at Anfield in the league. That was 6 in total. I don't know if I probably should have looked that one up, but I don't know if we did that again in history. It was absolutely dismal, that the form and the rut that we were in, having just won the league the year before, Champions League before that, obviously Club World Cup and Super Cup as well thrown in the mix. We were on a huge spell of success with Klopp, and then to go and see it crushed the way it was like that, 6 defeats in a row at Anfield, it was, and then you top that off with the real sad news of Klopp losing his mother, Alisson losing his father. Like, it was a very, very dark spell at the club. Obviously, we've come off the back of COVID from 2020. At this point, there's still no fans in the stadiums. It was a very, very bleak period, and thankfully for Liverpool, they found the strength to get through, get some players back as well. We had a huge injury crisis at the time. Basically, every centre-back and their dog was out. We then pulled in midfielders to play in defence, and they would get injured. Like, it was a horror show, but we recovered. We got top four. But yeah, for me, in Klopp's spell, that it didn't get any worse than that for me, despite missing top four and his penultimate season. That was truly the low point as a Liverpool fan, probably, as well as in Klopp's era as a whole. Then let's see. So we've talked about peak and low. That peak, for example, spread across a couple of seasons, but looking at just seasons individually, what do I think was the best season? Now, I'm actually going to split best season and favourite season apart, because I think our best season had to be the 2018-2019 season. Champions League winners, having missed out on it the year before, so we got that in our locker. We then nearly won the league as well, famously, or should I say infamously, 97 points and runners-up to Man City's 98-point win. Incredibly unlucky. Both sides in incredible form. I think both undefeated in their last 8-10 games or whatever it was. Just reeling off win after win, waiting to see which side would slip up first, and neither did. City ironed their way out to see that league. But just in the January that year when we lost at the Etihad, our only loss in the league that season, it was just 11 millimetres that stopped us from taking the lead there in that game. A game we went on to lose 2-1. And you just think, what if? But, you consider the fine margins there. If that game at the Etihad, obviously it's a big if, but let's say that game at the Etihad became a win, we would have finished as league winners on 100 points as Centurions and Invincibles. Centurion, Invincible league winners, as well as Champions League winners in the same season, would have been bonkers. But, of course, even without that league win, a 97-point league season and a Champions League win for me is just incredible levels, and that has to be the best season. But somehow it doesn't quite make it as my favourite, just because 2021/2022, of course, Liverpool went very close to doing the unthinkable. We went close to becoming the first side in English history to win a quadruple. Now, this would have been unprecedented success. We missed out on the league by a point again. 92 points wasn't enough. City winning it with 93. And we lost the Champions League final to Real Madrid, with Courtois making a record 9 saves in the Champions League final. Now, again, it was so close, not quite enough, but the journey we went on that season, winning the League Cup on penalties against Chelsea, winning the FA Cup on penalties against Chelsea again, and the belief that we saw as Liverpool fans that season, the games we experienced, the emotions we experienced, all culminating in this little bubble where we very, very nearly created history that had never been done before and will probably never be done. Winning a quadruple is so difficult with the way fixture congestion is now. And I mean, going forward, would the League Cup even stand the tell of time? We don't know. At some point, is that a cup that might have to be cut to make the fixture scheduling easier for players? But yeah, it's so difficult to do. Even you look at the United City treble winners, they couldn't get that League Cup in it as well. And our rival fans were shaking at the thought of Liverpool doing it. They all came after us when we didn't. But the memories of that will last us a lifetime. And as a Liverpool fan as well, I had the honour of being there at the final game at Anfield against Wolves on the final day, and that for me is my best ever football memory. Like, being there in that atmosphere, hearing that, going into it as well, we didn't expect to win the league. We thought City would get their job done, but they went 1-0 down. They went 2-0 down to a Coutinho strike led by Gerrard's Aston Villa. It felt like it was a script being written. But it wasn't to be, and still those memories though will stick with me for a lifetime. I was there for the Champions League final a week later, there for the parade. It was just, it was a truly magical season that didn't have the ending it deserved, but still, I have to personally, I think for the memories and being there as well to experience large parts of it at the end, that season's got to go down as my favourite. Then next, I want to do favourite player. Now, I think there's a lot of honourable mentions here. I'm going to chuck in the names of Firmino, Mane, Trent, Van Dijk, Robertson, Hendo as some key ones here who aren't going to quite make the cut for me. But for me, it whittles down to two players at either end of the pitch. We've got Alisson at one and Salah at the other. And I think a lot of people might say Salah, but as you can tell from what I've just preempted there, I'm going to go with Alisson. For me, Alisson is a truly world-class keeper. And we, as Liverpool Football Club, certainly in my 26 years of life, and I'd say maybe, 15, 20 odd years of following the sport a bit closer, we've been blessed with incredible attacking talents. We've always had that. But what we haven't always had is the most reliable goalkeeper in the world. Someone like Alisson, who genuinely is the best, or at least one of the best, if not the best goalkeeper in the world in their time. And, you have to throw it all the way back to before I was even born, the likes of Bruce Grobbelaar, Ray Clements, these iconic Liverpool goalkeepers who, Alisson has thrown his name in that hat. Growing up as well, I had Dudek, obviously, heroics at Istanbul, and Pepe Reina, a pretty solid goalkeeper as well. But this was a level above, and the signings of Alisson and Van Dijk really took Liverpool to the next level, pushed us onto the success that we achieved. And yeah, for me, Alisson has to be my favourite because of, I think he was the signing that really, really made a difference. We've had other good players in other fields of the pitch before, but this was the one that stood out to me. The goalkeeper that for so long we've been crying out for, and just seasons before as well, we'd seen the likes of Karius, Mignolet, decent goalkeepers, but they just weren't consistent enough at the level of someone of Alisson. And yeah, he's now become a model, a role model for the next batch of goalkeepers. You see the interviews of goalkeepers coming up now, they all talk about Alisson being one of the ones to watch and to learn off. So we've been so blessed to have him at the club. And yeah, in Klopp's era, I think that has to be not just top signing, but top player to have played under Jurgen Klopp for Liverpool in that time. And yeah, so moving on to the next category, I want to go on to favourite game. I think this one is probably a slightly more unanimous one amongst Liverpool fans. It's the 4-0 win over Barcelona, of course. So this was an unthinkable comeback at the time that set us on our way to winning the Champions League final in Madrid in 2019. 3-0 down to Barcelona after the first leg, where I thought we actually played pretty well. I thought 3-0 was harsh, but it was 3-0, very nearly 4-0 to Barcelona. Late on, I remember Dembele missing a big chance for them, but 3-0 down. Then the weekend in between the first and second leg is something that probably people forget and don't talk about as much. But that weekend in between, Barcelona had pretty much, I think their league season was like settled. I can't remember, they won the league that year. I think it was already decided pretty much. So they rested their entire 11 to rest them up before that second leg. But we were still in a title race, neck and neck with Man City, a point dividing the two. So we had a very intense, I think, 3-2 win over Newcastle, a late winner from Origi, I believe. And yeah, so it was an intense weekend for us versus Barca pretty much having the weekend off. Then coming into that second leg, we were missing Salah, Firmino, key players. Wijnaldum, I think, wasn't picked to start, but obviously the magic moment that it was that he came on, I think, for the injured, was it Robertson who maybe got injured and Milner had to slot in at left back or something? Yeah, so again, it was a very weird, the odds were completely stacked against us. No one really gave us a chance. I, as a Liverpool fan, probably many others, didn't believe something could seriously happen. There was just that sliver of hope that, a magical European night might be there. But when we scored early on, Henderson's shot saved and falling to Origi to put 1-0 up, there was suddenly this injection of belief, and it was incredible atmosphere. I would have loved to have been at that game. But even watching it from, I think, my university dorm room at the time, I don't know why I said dorm room, I'm not American, but my uni room at the time, accommodation, I had an exam the next morning. I absolutely failed because I did not study very well for it, pretty distracted by this European comeback of Liverpool's. But it was an incredible result. And back then we won 4-0. I think as well, away goals was still a thing. So I remember there's that funny, now infamous tweet from Barca saying, if we just score one, then Liverpool need 5. And they're not going to score. They're not going to score 5, right? Or we'll at least score 1, something along those lines. And it was like, well, you didn't. We won 4-0, and it was one of the greatest comebacks, not just in our history as Liverpool Football Club, but probably European and football history. It's certainly up there. And incredible game. But now let's zoom in beyond games and let's look at goals. And we scored plenty of goals under Jurgen Klopp. But for me, the best goal was one I again got to witness live. So perhaps, when you're actually there, you have a bit more of a emotional tie to these kind of moments. And I think even if I wasn't there, this would have had to be in contention. It was Mohamed Salah's goal against Man City, Anfield, November. Or was it October? October 2021. We were, I think, deadlocked at this point, 0-0 against Man City. It was 1-1 actually. City had just levelled. I think Mane had put us in front. De Bruyne had maybe levelled for Man City, and it was very tense at Anfield, of course. 21-22 season this is. We're going for the league against them. This is all the way back in October though, so it's earlier in the season, but we know it's City. We're gonna be competing against them. Every point matters. And then the ball comes to Mohamed Salah, maybe some 30-40 yards out. He starts a mazy run, drops 1, drops 2, cuts in the box, comes back in, pegs it far post, and it's just absolutely beautiful. It won goal of the season as well, so you can tell already it was gonna be an iconic goal of the Klopp era. But Salah as well is someone that people don't, there's often the Salah Hazard debate, and people say Hazard is the more aesthetically pleasing player. He's the one you prefer to watch. But this goal from Salah, this wasn't just some cut in and finesse. This was majestic. And to make things even more spectacular, he actually went and did it again the next week against Watford. He did almost an identical goal. So that, I guess, would have come into contention for best goal as well. But this is the one for me. Doing it at Anfield against Man City ahead of what is going to be a long title race. And with the pressure on, the score 1-1, I think we were deep into the second half at this point. Unfortunately, City do end up getting an equaliser in that game. But yeah, what a goal it was. And seeing that live, I remember actually rubbing my eyes. I was in disbelief. I was in the main stand and we just went absolutely berserk at that goal, and it was just did he just do that? Did he just sit 4 or 5 City players down and put it in like nothing? And he strolled over to celebrate in front of the fans, casual as you like. Oh, it was beautiful goal, and yeah, I would hope to see a better one in my lifetime, because it would take some doing to top a goal like that. And then finally I want to go on to my favourite Jurgen Klopp moment. It's a video about the Klopp era, so it'd be wrong to not pick a Jurgen Klopp moment itself. And I think there's only one moment I can pick personally, and that is Klopp after our Champions League final defeat to Real Madrid 2018. This is so early Klopp era. We've lost the League Cup final on penalties to Man City. We've lost the Europa League final to Sevilla. We've now made, and these were both in his first season he's taken in charge of, 15-16 from Brendan Rodgers, so not even his first full season. But this is now 2018. Klopp's really started to create his side. We haven't signed Alisson at this point, but most of the side is taking shape. We've made a Champions League final run, and the excitement's there. This could be our first big piece of silverware. Our last trophy before this was 2012 League Cup, but the last time we'd won something massive like this was the Champions League 2005, and for us Liverpool fans, it was crushing, absolutely crushing, losing the final. You had Salah going off injured early on, our key player. You had, Karius having a howler of a game, making 2 huge mistakes to roll it out to Benzema for the opener, letting a long-range Bale goal go through his hands for the third. Bale scoring a spectacular bicycle kick as well out of almost nothing. It was just odds stacked against us. It just felt like everything went against us in that final, and it was one of those bleak moments where you think after that, it would have, having experienced 13-14 season as well, being so close to the league title, you would have begun to thought as a Liverpool fan, is it just again, we've just got to appreciate the journey, we're not going to actually get the crowning moment. But Klopp had a moment that was, you know, the kind of like pinnacle moment of his era. It really stamped a mark on what Klopp was going to be about. The next morning, was it, or even overnight, a video went out basically of him with his friends, a group of friends, just singing joyful after losing a Champions League final just probably hours before to Real Madrid, singing about how Real Madrid had all the luck. They were going to be back next year to bring it to Liverpool, along those lines. You'll remember the chant, surely. But seeing that was just like, wow. You know, in the face of crushing defeat, probably most people would be miserable. Klopp singing and having a laugh about it, you know, like, you know, we were there, we made it to the final, we got unlucky. It is what it is, you know, brush it off, move on. And that was staple piece Klopp. That, you know, that was the moment that was like, you know, when we look back at his whole era, that was like, wow, that was probably the catalyst. He didn't let people sit and feel sorry for themselves. He picked them up and he went again. And we won the Champions League the next year. Missed out on the Premier League, but then the season after that, won that. Now, towards the end of Klopp's era, we didn't quite get the bigger trophies again, but that was always Jurgen Klopp in a nutshell. He would pick people up, and now other fans will say he was a specialist at coming second. I'd say he's a specialist at dealing with coming second, you know, feeling you were so close but you're not quite good enough. He would pick you up and make you feel like you can go again. You know, the next opportunity is around the corner, and it was so important. That really sold him to Liverpool, not just as a manager, but it made him a favourite amongst players, fans, as a human being as well, and people worldwide. Like, this was a man who gets knocked down, but he'll not just pick himself back up, but everyone around him, put them on his back, and he'll go again. And that was probably the best way to sum up Jurgen Klopp. I think his finest moment for me, and he had a ton of iconic moments. You've seen all the highlights, you've seen all the, you know, the throwbacks when he announced he was leaving. But that for me will always sit as the most special Jurgen Klopp moment of his era, and by far my favourite. So I think it's a good spot to end it as well. Let me know in the comments some of your finest memories from the Jurgen Klopp era. I will pin a comment probably with the category headers if you want to follow that as well. But yeah, let me know your thoughts, and until the next one, take care.